Welcome back, boils and ghouls. It is trivia time. Today we are going to be talking about Don Rosa. Now, if the name Don Rosa means anything to you, then you're probably flipping out. You're like, yes, all right, we're going to talk about Don Rosa. Otherwise, you're like, who the hell is Don Rosa? And I'm going to tell you, like, Don Rosa was a guy who worked on Uncle Scrooge, specifically the Uncle Scrooge comic books. The Uncle Scrooge comic books are very important. They are considered classically to be the best Walt Disney comics, and the Disney comics were pretty damn good, man. Some people might not know who Don Rosa is, and to explain who Don Rosa is, I have to tell you who Carl Barks was. Carl Barks, I think, is a name that's kind of disappearing. That's unfortunate, and I think it has a lot to do with Don Rosa, but not Don Rosa himself doing it. We'll talk about it. Carl Barks is the guy who invented Uncle Scrooge. Now, Uncle Scrooge is one of Walt Disney's most popular and beloved characters. He's also one of the few characters that Disney has made a lot of money with and has stuck around for a long time that was not created for animation purposes. He was from the comic books created by Carl Barks. You would imagine that the artist who created, wrote, and designed the entire mythology idea and everything behind the character would be the most iconic artist and writer on the series, and you are correct. The only person to have ever, I would say, threatened this position would be Don Rosa. And as time has passed on, I think that Don Rosa has actually surpassed Carl Barks in popularity. Carl Barks, as I said, created Uncle Scrooge, and he designed the entire story and mythology behind Uncle Scrooge. When Don Rosa picked up, he picked up as a huge fanboy of Carl Barks. In fact, so much of a fanboy that every single story that he ever did was dedicated to Carl Barks. And all of the stories that he did are continuations of ideas and stories that Carl Barks originally put forward. Now, you would think that a man paying this much tribute and homage would be a good thing, and you'd be honored to see this. But unfortunately, because I think of the way Disney treats a lot of their creators and artists, Carl Barks hired what I can only describe as pit bull management later in his life. These guys knew that you were never going to get any money out of Walt Disney. You weren't getting a cent from Mickey Mouse. But what you could do was cripple any competition that was out there and maximize the crumbs that you picked up while Disney was feeding on the giant blue whale above you. So, to do this, Carl Barks, whose position was beginning to be threatened by this guy who was coming up through the ranks, Don Rosa, they went to completely cripple him out, and they started a feud between Don Rosa and Carl Barks. However, this brought attention to Don Rosa, and Don Rosa had done something very interesting. He was heavily influenced by the original designs of Carl Barks, but he brought an R. Crumb level of underground detail and pin line work to the illustrations that had never been seen before. He not only perfected Carl Barks' style, but he added to it. This was a problem. So these pit bull management guys basically come in, they start up a feud, and they try to destroy Don Rosa. In the process, they elevate Don Rosa to essentially legendary status because more and more people are checking out his stuff. In the meantime, they make Carl Barks look like a complete jackass. Eventually, Carl Barks fires them, and he does make up with Don Rosa. They did meet before Carl Barks passed away at 97, but unfortunately, it was too late in his life, and there was just no chance of any type of collaboration at that point. Now, anybody who knows anything about Carl Barks or Don Rosa knows that information is spotty at best because they are not outspoken individuals. This is where things start to get really interesting because Don Rosa and Carl Barks are extremely similar, not only in their illustrations, but in their real lives. So Carl Barks was revered as the creator of Uncle Scrooge. Obviously, when you work on one of Disney's largest properties, you're going to be exposed to a massive worldwide fan base. Later on in life, Don Rosa gave an interview in a documentary called The Life and Times of Don Rosa, where he talks about why he believes the feud with Barks started and what caused it all But in the process, he answers a question about not only Carl Barks, but about Rosa himself, which I had long pondered and didn't think I would ever get an honest or open answer to. This is unfortunately not in the cut of the film. It is only offered on the DVD as an extended deleted scene. There is an audio and a video error in the scene. I believe this might be the reason that it was cut. And also the pacing is a little bit weird, but it's got some amazing information. So basically what Don Rosa says is he wrote as a young man many gushing fan letters, and he could never figure out why Carl Barks was always so standoffish and held him at arm's length, and why he didn't embrace him more. But that as Don Rosa got older, not only did he understand, but he commiserated. Don Rosa said that you have to become like that. At a point, people allow you to exert far too much control over them in ways that you could never even imagine. The two examples that Don Rosa gave were a man who had met and fallen in love with his wife and gotten married because of a mutual love of Don Rosa's Uncle Scrooge, and the other guy was a guy, I believe it was an archaeology or a history degree, it was one of the two, but he had gotten an actual college degree because he was such a big Uncle Scrooge fan. And while these might sound like positive things that you would bring up to a creator, to Don Rosa, and he explains that by extension he knows Carl Barks was like this, that when you say that to a creator, you are essentially telling them that if anything negative ever happens with that in their life, I mean, either way, that is a monumental thing to put on another human being, that you made my life this way. I modeled this huge section of my life off of your work without you ever asking me to do it, without ever having met you, in many cases without ever having heard your voice. And Don Rosa said that not only is this not a good thing, but it scares him. He got into comics to entertain you for 15 minutes. And that having that level of control over someone else, especially that you're not aware of or you don't have control of, is really scary. Actually, he didn't say control of. He says that you're not aware of. Is very scary. And when he put it like that, and you're working on one of the most highly revered, and the fans are extremely rabid for Uncle Scrooge. I know this because I am an Uncle Scrooge fan. We can smell our own, guys. It made absolute perfect sense. It's also extremely interesting for me to know now how similar Don Rosa and Carl Barks really are, not just in their work, in their structuring, in their storytelling. And Don Rosa did not clone Carl Barks in any way. He learned from a lot of other places. He read all comics. He is a massive comic book collector. If you ever see a fucking, oh my God, his collection is mind-blowing. He's been collecting for 60 years nonstop, just amassing and never parting with his most beautifully archived collection. Holy God. And he drew from everywhere. And to know that, and to know how similar he was also personally to Carl Barks, is extremely interesting. They're considered to be, without a doubt, the two best artists and most influential artists who have ever worked on Uncle Scrooge. I highly doubt that ever changes. It's even surprising that anyone ever challenged Carl Barks, but Don Rosa's stuff is that impressive. It is truly the only interesting artist's edition from anything that is at all related to strips or anything like that I've been interested in. IDW put out an artist edition of his stuff on at least volume 1 of his Uncle Scrooge stuff, and I know he's finally started to, I think either Disney just has said screw it and gone ahead, or they got permission and are working with Rosa to do collections of his work, because in the past it was extremely hard to get his stuff. It's very expensive and you usually had to get it from overseas. Rosa's stuff is incredible, as well as Carl Barks. I highly recommend, even if you are not into Disney comics. Let me explicitly say I do not read anthropomorphic animal comics. I hate them, in fact. They are the antithesis of everything that I enjoy and love. They are like musicals. They are the one comic book that I do not like, and musicals are the one type of movie that I do not like. I just cannot ever do any musical, no whatsoever. Can't do anthropomorphic talking animals. I don't like Disney. I don't like I don't like them. Don Rosa's Uncle Scrooge, oh man, it is an experience you owe yourself if you are a comic book fan. I'm going to put it that way. I compared him to R. Crumb earlier, and that should tell you something. If you enjoy Don Rosa's stuff, please check out Carl Barks' stuff as well. Not only is he the architect and stuff, but Don Rosa would ask you to do that as well. As I said, he dedicated every story to Carl Barks. So I hope you guys enjoyed. I hope you learned something. If not, tune in tomorrow. Totally different fact about a totally different thing. If you did, please do me a favor. Hit that like button. It's a really big help to me. Get down in the comment section below. Let me know. Make sure you Hulk smash that subscribe button. If you do that, ding the little notification bell so you keep up with these doses of trivia that I'm dropping all the time, as well as the larger stuff on the channel you might be interested in as well. Thank you again for sticking with me. I hope you enjoyed, and as always, I really, truly, and honestly ask only two things, everybody. Keep hitting those local shops and keep reading comics.